Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's conversation and thank you for making the time to join us in this conversation. It's wonderful to see so many faces. People involved for quite a while with the project and new faces as well. And we're thrilled to have this opportunity to take a little bit of time this evening and share ideas, share thoughts, hear feedback, hear directions, and figure out our next steps together. So to kick things over to Lexy and Daniel, if that's okay. They're our master and mistress of ceremonies, leading us through a lot of this work. And we'll just kind of get started. We're going to have everyone muted during the early portion of the meeting while we're going over a range of materials, and then we will open it up with some group chats so that everyone has the opportunity to connect in a smaller group. And then we would like to feel free during the earlier portions of the evening, to use the chat function. You can access that on the bottom of the Zoom screen to share thoughts, to share ideas, to ask questions. We'll be monitoring that during the conversation. And then let me apologize for not introducing myself at the beginning. I'm Michelle Bandy-Zalatoris. I'm an urban designer with city architecture and have had the absolute pleasure of working with the East 66th Street design team and engagement team on this effort, including partners at Midtown Cleveland and Famicos, our engagement experts, Daniel Gray-Kontar and Lexy Lattimore. And then we've got our city architecture team here, which includes Alex Pesta, Krista Pisarczyk, and Julian Curtis. So again, thanks for everyone who's joining us tonight. We are looking forward to a fantastic conversation, and I will turn things over.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lexy Lattimore. I have had the privilege of speaking with a number of you, both in fellowship and in some more formalized interviews that we've had. As Michelle very generously introduced, I've had the pleasure of working with Daniel Gray-Kontar and the rest of this team on trying to reach as many folks as possible. And what we're hoping to do tonight is to start to connect everyone that we've talked to so that this becomes a full, engaged and building experience where we are thinking about the streetscape, of course, but that we're also considering ways that we might connect with one another. Hough is nothing without its people. Cleveland is nothing without its people, and Hough has always been made up of wonderful, wonderful people who care very much so about each other and about the community and are very active in it. So I thank each and every one of you for your dedication and for your love. We are excited to be here today. Before we go into the conversation, we know that it's after 5, getting close to 6 o'clock. Some folks have been working. Other folks have been doing things at home or sitting. So we just want to take a moment to get up and stretch and orient ourselves before we get deeper into the discussion. I just want to acknowledge that this week and this past 2 weeks has been very heavy, not just for our community, for the nation, and for the world. And we know that these things, that police brutality, that inequity, that these things are not new. They did not start 2 weeks ago. And that many people in our community have not only been facing these atrocities, but have also been fighting and resisting, and that Hough has an incredible legacy of that resistance and of that fight. So in order to honor that, we just want to take a minute to center into our bodies and to just shake up what needs shaking, to move things around a little bit. Michelle, I'm actually going to request, if you don't mind, so I could see everybody, to stop sharing screen. That is perfect. I'm going to reshare my sound and take out these headphones so I can play some music. Everyone is muted, but I invite you to stand if you're able, to stay seated if not. You can do this from a chair or from your feet, whatever feels best for you. And I'm just going to start some music and just talk us through a little bit of movement. Breathe it in, let it out, breathe it in, let it go. I just invite everybody to breathe in, nice and slow. Let it out, breathe it in, let it go. Breathe it in, just flutter the eyes closed. This time, one of the things that I want to, I'm not sure if Miss Allison, hopefully that's a little bit better. We're going to take all of the energy, whether it be negative or positive, whether it be rage or disappointment, and we're going to bundle all of that into our bodies into a tight ball. So you should squeeze every single muscle in your body, and then we're going to let it out in an audible noise. We may not all be able to hear each other, but it should sound maybe something like this. You're going to take everything in, squeeze, 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 and let it go. Like really audibly, physically let it go. We're going to take it in for about 4 or 5 seconds. Okay, here we go. Breathing in. Hold everything, squeezing every single muscle, taking every bit of tension that you felt, anything that's made you upset, and let it go. Good, 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 good. And do it again. You can bring the arms all the way up, taking in any rage, any bits of disappointment, any feelings of feeling inferior or not enough, and let it go. Good. Do it one more time because it feels good. Here we go. Bringing it all the way up. All of that anger and rage and anything that just hasn't felt good, any pain in the body, and let it out. Beautiful, beautiful. Roll those shoulders back. Start to roll them. Good. Good. You can start to make circles with the whole body, just rolling, whatever feels good. Just feeling that we have freedom in our bodies, even if we don't have freedom of mobility right now, or if we don't have freedom to be outside in the way we want to, or if we don't have freedom to be in our streets the way we want to or deserve to be. We have this freedom of our body. Good. Now starting to just rub the hands together. Rub, 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 rub. Creating some friction, some energy. And taking that and just starting to either massage or rub or pat all over the body, just waking things up. Starting to feel what may be tense. We hold tension, we hold trauma, we hold pain in the body. Starting to just massage that out, tapping the face, just waking everything up. As you're tapping, just letting out a sound, just tap, 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 good, just letting your voice resonate. Good, and just starting to shake things out. Shake, 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 shake. Good, good, shaking everything out. Just getting kind of wild with it. There's something freeing and just like letting it all the way go. Nobody's watching you. No one can see you. There's too many people all over the page. Good, and taking one more big deep breath in to let it go. And let it go with a big sigh. And doing that one more time, breathing all the way up. And let it go with a sigh. Letting the eyes rest and letting the heart rate come down. Holding these words. You are beautiful. You are supposed to be here. You have such incredible purpose. We are grateful for you. Taking another deep breath in. Good. Bringing those hands to a prayer. Just giving yourself a little bow for being here. Beautiful. Thank you all so much for moving with me. This has been so much fun already. I hope that you feel settled or looser, or maybe you've noticed that there's tension being held that you didn't realize and want to work through it with some self-massage later. So just settling back into our chairs, we are going to start to talk through some of the conversations that we've been having with many of you. So Michelle, I can stop sharing my sound if we're able to get back to those slides. Great. So we have talked with so many of you and are really grateful for you giving us your time and your love and your stories. And so what Daniel and I are going to endeavor to do in the next 10, 15 minutes or so is just to share some of that feedback. We have spoken to residents along East 66th Street. We have had 2 conversations with 2 different youth groups. We've talked to 2 different groups of mothers, 1 group of women and mothers as well. We are working on connecting better with our seniors and have some conversations at Fatima coming up. And we also talked with folks in their 30s and 40s in the neighborhood. And so you'll see some of that feedback reflected in the slides that Michelle and Alex and City Architecture are going to share. But for now, we wanted to present what we're calling raw data. Some of the things that we heard over and over, some of the ways that your stories are intersecting, and then we'll break into smaller groups so that we can talk about it. If there are questions or comments, there's a chat feature right at the bottom. It's just a little bubble that says chat. It should be next to participants. You can click on that and leave your comments. So we'll go to the next slide. And talking with some folks who live along East 66th Street, we asked about their walking experience. What is it like for you walking along East 66th Street? And these are some of the comments that were made that reflect what that experience has been. So, for the most part, there was a reflection of feeling relatively safe. People are walking along the street, walking their dogs, riding bikes, jogging, using the neighborhood. And also that sometimes there's a feeling of a different feeling either at night or depending where you are in the neighborhood, people are tending to walk near League Park because there's a lot of activity in that area. And so going to the next slide, we talked a little bit about how that experience could be improved. And the predominant ways were through more lighting, more cameras, keeping things clean, having a bike trail, and thinking about where folks are walking. So, if people aren't walking down past Linwood, why might that be? And how could we make that a more seamless transition and experience? The same thing is true for getting closer to Chester Avenue in the ways that people feel that changes as they walk. Regarding lighting, and we'll go to the next slide on that, and I'm going to stick these headphones in. We talked about the dark spots We have some dark spots because since we have some vacancies, it's not as well lit as it can be. A number of folks mentioned the historical nature of East 66th Street. And so needing some lights with some attractive light posts, ones that pay homage to that historic look, but that also help people to really illuminate their path better, needing more light for sure. Going towards the next slide, we started to talk about what types of uses and businesses and activities people would like to see. We have a number of talents and gifts in the neighborhood. A few things that were mentioned: a tech and gadget store, a desire to keep the neighborhood dry, so not having a liquor store come, a garden, a playground, a gallery, art gallery, event space where we could have gallery showings and local artists, a coffee shop. And because of the ethnic background that's represented, some sort of store that caters to African-American products, natural products, hair, skin, and clothing products. And just opening it up so that it's a cultural center. Moving towards the next slide. We asked for other feedback and ideas. Interactive kiosks came up, making sure that the that the crosswalks are accessible, hearing accessible, thinking about wireless network and having a network where, as you're moving from one place to the other on the street, you're able to have a seamless wireless internet experience as well. Thinking about a computer lab that would be open after 6 p.m., needing something like a Kinko's or a place to print. People mentioned desiring bike lanes and just wanting to keep the site visibility in the neighborhood closer to what it is so that the buildings don't get too high. And I believe this next slide will be my last. We've been also asking people what their gifts are, particularly in these East 66th Street specific interviews, which were more one-on-one, longer form. Some of the gifts in our community include beautification, music theory, classical piano, advocating for the community. We have a number of volunteers, basic IT literacy, people who are great at connecting, facilitating dialogues. These things are important because we know that every single person on this call has an incredible gift to give that they've already given. And we want to make sure that we're plugging in as many of those gifts as possible and providing structures that support the realization of those gifts and bringing them to the level that you want to see them grow and flourish. From here, I'm going to pass the mic to Daniel to talk a bit about what some of the conversation has been with our youth. And I'm requesting that everyone be thoughtful about what thoughts are coming up for you, as well as some of the themes that you see emerging, because those are some of the conversations we'll have in our small groups. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lexy. And thanks once again, everyone, for being here. Before I start, I just want to thank in particular, I want to thank everybody for being here. And as we look around at everybody that's on this call, there's so much diversity on this call, which is reflective of the diversity truly that's in Ward 7, but Hough specifically. So I'm so grateful to see all of these diverse faces, diversity in terms of age, race, gender, you name it, is here. So what I want to do with what Lexy said in mind is to really focus on the youth voice. And I want to signal that it's really important in this moment, in this time, particularly because so much of the protest that's happening in this country, at the end of the day, it is really young people demanding that they have a seat at the table, that their voices are heard and taken seriously. And so with this in mind, even before all of this happened, that is what we were thinking about in including youth voice. So what I'm going to do really quickly is we're going to start with them and some of the things that they had to say about what they would like to see in the neighborhood and what their vision is. And so I'm going to share my screen really quickly. And give me just one moment there. I'm going to go to a different, there we go. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is I just want to share the first group of youth. We interviewed two different groups of young people in the neighborhood. And what they did was they essentially broke down what they were hoping the feel of the street would be and what the look of the street would be. And these are youth from all across Hough. One thing that I also want to say that's very important is that these young people came together across all different walks of life. So this is a very diverse group of youth too. We have some youth artists, some youth athletes, you name it, they were here. So as far as the feel of the street, the first group said the street should feel like a safe zone, similar to what they call the Safe Zone Sunday at Cruz Park. It should feel like children are coming together. You should feel as though you can organize a cookout or a gathering at any point. No one should be left out. Someone said something really important, which was, we all know where Little Italy is. We know where Chinatown is. This should feel like Black Avenue. He said it should be a place where kids have things to do even in the winter. And they said the feeling of creating where everybody comes together as one. This is a big theme, is this idea of unity. And a street, for what one of the young men said, the street needs to feel like it's for the babies and the ladies. It should feel very family centric. I love that. And they also said lots of athletics. So this is the feel. But as far as the look is concerned, they were really very clear. They wanted lots of murals and billboards with great leaders, tables for dominoes, chess, card games, spaces for games of hopscotch, little playgrounds. It was very clear that they wanted to make space for the return of a Salvation Army. And this comes up over and over and over and over again. One young person said, this should feel like an East 4th Street. It should be walkable. And what he said was, you don't have a lot of violence because there's no drive-bys or anything like that on East 4th. And so he said, to make sure of that, make this walkable. It should have an East 4th feel. Mounted barbecue pits, basketball courts, lots of colors. And another young man said positive words and affirmations all over the place. I think also here a lot of art, and it should be elegant, not like a concrete jungle. So this is the first group. I want to share with you the second group of young people. And as you can see, their ideas, even though they were in two different groups, very, very similar. The feeling of the community coming together. A block party, parade feeling as if it could happen at any time. And then they were very clear. It should feel like youth and seniors can come together to understand each other. There should be culturally responsive arts, Black-owned businesses, biking, and youth need to feel more connected to Fatima, youth organizing events and gatherings. So all of this here, you can read it. It's all the feel that they're hoping for. And at the end of the day, what this is about is creating, through East 66th Street, one Hough. And this is what they were really trying to get to here. But as far as a concrete look, once again, bike trails, barbecue grills. They envisioned a new Salvation Army and potentially an art center or a complex for the neighborhood. Lots of outdoor sports, park benches and tables, lots of light, socially relevant artwork and murals, a very walkable street, connection between this street and the Midtown Tech Hive. They said lots of trash cans, repurpose or tear down buildings, workout equipment, bicycles, and chess and checker sets. So these are the things that they like to see. Some things that they've witnessed in other neighborhoods, but that they would also like to witness in their own neighborhood as well. So when you take these two youth conversations and you put them together, there's a consistent narrative. And that narrative is they want a street that attracts youth and families, a street that unifies all of Hough, a street that feels like Black Avenue, a street with lots of murals and culturally relevant, responsive images, tables and benches, barbecue pits, outdoor workout equipment, basketball courts, open green spaces for play, walkable, bicycle trails, very well lit, and they said above all, the return of the rec center. And they were very clear about why that was. We won't get into that here, but the youth that are on the call, maybe that's something you can get into in your small groups. So this is from the young people. I really want to quickly turn to what some of the mothers said, because we also had two groups of moms. So that was a different conversation. You all have to tell me if I'm going over time. So the mothers had a different look, and in many respects, it's very similar to what the youth were saying. They wanted the feeling of a village on the street, a feeling of coming together, of safety, and it being a spiritually uplifting street. But as far as the look is concerned, you'll see a lot of things that are very similar to what the youth said. Playgrounds with soft pads and clean new equipment, murals with lots of verses, the creation of gardens and meditation circles, good lighting, large sidewalks, parks for sport and play, and envisioning cooking center, history center, centers that are open late, because if things are open later, then there's more safety. Holistic centers, and they said also doctors, dentists, and that mental health is of absolute importance. So that is where some of these meditation circles and gardens come into play, but also actually having mental health practitioners, doctors, and dentists of color along the street. And so these were some of the things that were said by the youth and the mothers who came together in different focus groups, but you'll find that really what they want is the same thing. They want a unified Hough that happens with East 66th Street along the spine, and they want Hough to come together. And they want this street to feel as though it's a family again. And this is very, very important across all folks, that people have a street where they can come together and get to know one another again. And so this is what we're hearing so far. We have more work to do. We have more folks to listen to. And I truly hope that youth that are on the call, I've represented you well, but shortly will be time to represent your voice, moms as well, and everybody on the call. So I want to thank you so much for this time just to share out the focus group conversations. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic back to Lexy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And again, we're going to go into greater depth, both in terms of the architectural team presenting how some of these concepts have layered into some of the things that they've brainstormed so far. You might find there will be other information that's interwoven with that discussion. So I know we've had some other conversations where that will be reflected in those slides as well. But for now, I actually want to kick things over to Michelle and Alex, who are going to talk a little bit about what we discussed from our last meeting, and just share some of what those thoughts were. And then we're going to get into groups so that we can all really, really talk this out.
Thank you, Lexy. Thank you, Daniel. Those words and the way that you've been able to share are absolutely amazing. So good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Pesta. I'm with City Architecture, and Daniel did a wonderful job of kind of capturing what we've heard in these meetings so far. And there's a mental image. Daniel, I know that words are incredibly important to you. They are to me as well. But some of the things that we heard, we can kind of roll through the slides to the project approach. But one of the mental images that kind of came to mind, Daniel, when you said like a seat at the table, right? Like, I don't know if everybody remembers. I remember when I went over to my grandmother's house, like when it was a family reunion or an event, like, right? Like she brought out the leaves to the table and the table got longer. And like, that's what we're trying to do with as many voices. And ultimately what we're going to end up doing with East 66th Street is we're going to build a new table. And the new table is going to be the street where folks can plug in. And so it's wonderful to see all these places and spaces that have been set at the table. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle in a second, but I want to remind everybody on this call and maybe reintroduce what has been our charge with any and all design. And that is the statement that you see on the screen. This streetscape, this design is to create a national model public space that emphasizes seamless connectivity and accessibility. I'm talking about accessibility from any way that you can think about it. Physical, social, technology, with an underlying commitment to justice and equity. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that this statement is it's been elevated to the nth degree with what has happened and what has been, what we've witnessed and what many folks have experienced over the last week and a half. And so that commitment, that kind of reminding of why we're doing this, sometimes that's important for us to kind of bring back into the conversation. And so we continue to listen. Everything that Daniel and Lexy outlined, you have said through conversations, through surveys, and what we've said in the past, and what I'll do is kind of a handoff to Michelle, is that we think of design. Our job is to interpret what you say and kind of translate it into design. So Michelle is going to walk through some of the design sketches and some of the design concepts for the street, reflecting the voices and the direction that you and others have given us. So thank you so much for your time. I'll be back a little bit later to do some more interactive kind of pieces as we close out, but I'm just really appreciative of being part of this conversation and everybody lending their voices tonight. So thank you.
Next slide, please. Thank you so much, Alex. I think one of the big things that is really critical to this process and the success of this work together is how these designs respond to the community's visions. As Alex mentioned, our job is really that of interpreters. We need to make sure that we're translating your ideas into an innovative new street design while adhering to the basic engineering codes for safety, but we need to find a way to bring that all together. So we've heard comments about great spaces for walking and biking, places that help to encourage people to spend time outside, more light and additional street trees. And you can see some of those quotes at the top of the image, along with how we start to bring, how we're thinking about starting to bring those pieces together, creating a wide sidewalk that's a path that can accommodate walking and biking, streetlights that don't just illuminate the roadway, but have an element that illuminates the sidewalk as well to bring light and increase feelings of safety, trees and greenery added to the street. So we kind of take the pieces that are part of streets and reorganize them a little bit to create new types of spaces and really a new approach to neighborhood streets in Cleveland. Next slide, please. So safe connections to other places are important. We heard about better connections and stronger connections to the Midtown Tech Hive and the neighborhood, connecting to Dave's. And we believe that the Chester intersection needs considerable redesign to help rebalance it and make it safer for people. including pedestrian activated signals so that the control is given over to pedestrians. We want audible and visual cues, wider medians that really start to create pedestrian refuge islands if you can't get all the way across, and we've got some imagery of how that might look. Wider crosswalks, again, prioritizing different types of movement and changing this from an auto-dominated place to a neighborhood connection point. Next slide, please. So multiple people have mentioned opportunities to close the street to traffic, that idea of creating festivals and community get-togethers and spaces that support that. We're looking at details that can allow these types of activities, and we're considering that block adjacent to League Park between Lexington and Linwood as a spot that could be closed on a regular basis and that has the types of details that support community activities when it is closed. We're looking at special paving, access to power, seating, umbrellas, places that support gathering within this block so that the feel of that space begins to feel more like a community place. Even when it is being used through traffic, it still kind of has a very different community feel. Next slide, please. So as we've mentioned on previous slides, a set of basic details that add plants and trees, places to sit, places to throw away trash, and safe places to walk and ride bikes can enable the street to better support the community. And certainly not, last but not least, this work has to include infrastructure that bridges the digital divide. So we need to build those types of smart elements into the street, in addition to the things that are more visible, like planting and street furniture. Next slide, please. But that's not all that we're considering. As you heard previously through both Lexy and Daniel's summaries of the conversations that have been happening about the neighborhood, there are even bigger ideas that have been part of this. So a rethinking of East 66th Street corridor and its connecting streets as an arts and cultural district is really exciting. It goes beyond the details of a roadway construction project to really incorporate a bigger guiding vision. The work of this planning process is to recognize and document these visions, find spaces where they can begin to develop, and make sure that the stage is set to continue to move them forward. We've looked at arts and cultural districts all over the country as part of this to gather some initial ideas. This is an image from 6 Square in Austin, Texas. Next slide, please. And these images reflect ideas that we've heard from you that include murals, signage, and banners that address history and neighborhood identity, leadership within the community, places for performance, and affirmative messages throughout. We love the idea of water-activated paint that could provide sidewalk poetry on rainy days, and stained glass sculptures that could sprinkle the surrounding areas with color. Next slide, please. And more types of murals, including an art park with shipping containers on which the murals can be changed on a periodic basis. We've heard the need for a replacement to the Salvation Army. That's a huge gap in the neighborhood now. And it was interesting when we found this neighborhood bike share container as an idea for how to begin to put neighborhood recreational activities back in place on a near-term basis while we build to bigger centers and activities. Next slide, please. The other big idea is that of rebuilding community places, parks, playgrounds, and plazas where people can connect. I think we've all kind of noted more than anything we've heard so far was a fondness for places and times when neighbors knew one another and had a greater range of things to do together with activities for all ages. Next, please. So one design concept that starts to address this comes from comments about occasional parking needs for large events in the neighborhood, balanced with the need for all kinds of park spaces. So we started thinking about ways that we could pull those two ideas together. So if additional parking was needed, it wasn't sitting empty and leaving gaps in the neighborhood during the times it wasn't being used. Park Place idea combines those two concepts, and the space is designed for gathering and play most of the time, but with dimensions that accommodate parking when extra parking is needed. These spaces can be designed to include amenities for sports, fitness, playground equipment, seating, and can adapt with the community's changing needs. Adam King is already developing the concept of adaptive parks within the neighborhood, and this was inspired by his ideas and intended to support his work. Next slide, please. We've also heard about the things that go beyond benches and trash cans to support community activities. Those special things like grills and chess tables and shelters to get out of the sun or get out of the rain. We can consider things like porch swings that we just designed for a waterfront park in Sandusky to enliven the corridor with things that are fun and surprising, and things like built-in bike tools to support community fitness and movement. Next, please. So this was a lot of ideas, and we're anxious to know what you think. We'd like to break into smaller groups to discuss these further and to get an understanding. Are these ideas hitting the mark? Are they representative of the priorities? Are we missing anything? Let's take the opportunity now to talk about that. So I'm gonna hit a button in just a second, and that is going to give you a notice to join a break room. We've got everybody set up to go automatically into breakout rooms. Each room will have a facilitator leading the conversation and really addressing those ideas and those questions. And then you'll be coming back into this main space after about 20 minutes, and we can do some reporting out on what we've heard and what we've discussed as part of this. So I'm going to go ahead and open all rooms, and if you get a message asking you to join a room, please hit yes. It looks like we're all back. Everyone made it. How were the conversations?
One of the people was very student.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Keith. Oh, they were good. Oh, it was good.
Excellent.
It was fire for real. It was nice.
Keith, Mrs. Timor said, "You rascal, she loves you too."
Hey, Keith John.
Hey, Mama.
All right.
Did you hear what I said, Keith?
Yes, I did. And
That's all
yeah.
right. I'll talk to
I
her
wasn't
later.
that rambunctious. I wasn't that rambunctious, okay? Just because I'm
Well, thanks everyone for participating in the breakout groups. We'd love to hear some reports out. If each of the groups would like to take a turn, and could we start with group 1? And our facilitators were Daniel and Mary in that group.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to, I didn't assign someone to lead out for that group. I'm bad facilitator, but I'll share out, and then hopefully if there's anything I'm missing, the folks from the group will go ahead and plug in.
Perfect.
So people by and large were really excited. I think that one of the things that came out was the idea of there being some police substations that can help with the security issue. And also for there to be clean and safe diplomats. And there being an amphitheater is another thing that came out. And this was Mr. Ron, who really brought some of these things out. And then there was also a lot of conversation about tech. And I think that to punctuate it, it was really about making sure that the tech is not just adequate, but that it is excellent. So that over the course of some years, we are still in a place where we are still able to do the things that we need to do and that we do not fall behind. So it being excellent in this moment so that over time, it can be built upwards so that it continues to be excellent. So that is another thing that came out. Another thing that was discussed was this idea of managing the properties that are the responsibility of the city. And so as these plans begin to emerge and manifest, making sure that the city is responsible for edging and cutting the lawns as the residents are doing the same. And that in the past has not always happened. So just making sure that that becomes a part of the way in which business is conducted. And then there was conversation about connecting young people from Youth Opportunities Unlimited to nonprofits so that young people are getting paid to maintain the neighborhood. And so that is, I think, I'm probably forgetting something. So blame it on the head and not the heart if I did. And if anybody else wants to add, please feel free from the group. Okay, then we are good for the order. And I'll pass the mic back to you, Miss Michelle.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's jump to group 3. And group 3 was led by Sam and Krista.
All right.
Hey, Sam, it's hard to hear you. Oh, man.
I know Sam was having some audio issues earlier. She may be having some again. Is that?
I can go, Michelle. I'm group 2.
Okay. That sounds great.
I could report out for us too if you wanted.
Say that again. Krista? Was that Krista?
Yeah, I was just going to say, since Sam can't speak,
go.
I could speak for our group.
Go.
Okay. So we had a mix in our group, a couple of young people, and an older gentleman with us, and so we got a range of perspectives. But what was nice to see was that a lot of the opinions and ideas aligned across them. The consensus was that a lot of the concepts that were presented really hit the key points perfectly when we're talking about parks, play areas, tables, spaces for kids. They appreciated that stuff that they had reported out in their groups were heard and kind of incorporated. One thing that Isaiah in our group had actually mentioned was that we created a schedule of events to kind of start programming the street so that it's not just people walking down, but when you're walking down, you kind of get to interact with different groups, younger, older, see what they're doing, things like tournaments, art shows, poetry, things to keep the cultural aspect alive in the neighborhood. In general, the priorities that were highest to them overwhelmingly was safety, and with that, they said lighting went hand in hand. And we talked about artwork is nice. It has a good look, but we have to be aware of vandalism. It would be good to see more businesses in the area, ones that are open, so that you kind of have, you know, people on the street at all different times. And trash cans and trees. We had a nice conversation about needing more trash cans and being the kind of people who like don't want to litter. So like you're keeping it with you, your trash with you until you can find a place to dispose of it. Mr. Benford actually mentioned that he has a trash can outside his house and he sees people stop their cars to actually get out and put trash in it when the opportunity arises. So they'd like to see more of that. Safety was the #1 priority. So that's it for us. Was there a group 4? Do they want to go ahead and report out?
I think we skipped group 2.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
I'm going to go last. So group 4, it's all you.
Oh, okay. So I think, I can't remember, I think I'm group 4. So we had a great conversation, wish we had more time, and Miss Sylvia is going to report out for us.
Hey, everybody. We are just like Daniel said, just a lot of excitement from those of us that are on the call. And most of our discussion was about just making sure that we bridge the gap between seniors and the young folks, and you know, of course, safety, breaking the stigma of what our neighborhood is like, and basically coming together as a community. So being able to have that meeting place, that place where we can come together as a community to do community-based things. But you know, we just kind of mentioned that has to be kind of like reintroduced, because back in the day, that's how we were raised, you know, but now it's just kind of not like that. Now everybody's kind of every man for themselves. So like the idea of the, you know, of the different things in the community to do with the young folks, and you know, of course, bringing
We lost you there, Miss Sylvia. Did you mute yourself by accident?
Can I finish for her?
Indeed.
Is it okay if I finish for her? Yeah.
Yes,
So the other
sir.
thing was,
that's just good old that's just good
Okay.
old bad internet. So
Okay.
I'm talking on Keith Jr.'s phone, but basically what I was saying is that I don't know where I cut off at. Okay, great. So I don't know where it cut off at, but just that we, you know, we're pretty much hearing the same kind of things from the other groups. A big thing was just safety and bringing the community together, bringing the seniors together with the young folks, being able to get together and work together in that, you know, in the new space that we're going to have. Training them to have respect, the young folks to have respect for it, and then also helping the seniors to, you know, be okay with the noise that might come from young people just enjoying their surroundings. So we're excited about that, and I think pretty much everybody's on the same page. Thank you, son.
You're welcome, Mama.
Great assist, Keith. Great assist.
So there was a group 5, and we didn't select anyone to be the report out person. So I'm going to start, and then Julian, if I miss anything, can you fill in? Great. I don't want to put anyone from our group on the spot. So overall, people were really, really enthusiastic. So Miss Beverly really wanted to see that aspect of unity keep going, of all the different people, seniors and youth especially. Keith Jr. Brought out the fact of, loving the street closure, the, and the potential of that, just to keep people going out, and the festive feel. I hope I got that correct? And then Ms. Pepper talked a little bit about arts and how she really loved the arts aspect. Julian, what am I missing?
No, I think you're capturing it. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of affection for the kind of multi-purpose park that served as a parking lot as well as a play space, a gathering space. I think there was a lot of affection not only for that, but just, I guess, for Keith made a really interesting point of having to leave the community to find places and spaces like that. So to have something like that in your own community and what that would mean. Bob also mentioned the importance of kind of turning League Park into more of a community space. It's right, and increasing that connection to the community that it maybe is lacking currently. And in terms of, if you want to transition to question 2, Joyce, and if there's anything I missed there.
No, let's do question 2.
Sure. I think the main thing was folks in our group were ready for action. Let's set some priorities and let's get started. Was really what we heard primarily from them. Joyce, I don't know if you have anything further to add.
That's it.
Lexy, were you able to share out for us?
I can, and then Bree, I would love for your support here too, or Mr. Jonathan or Mrs. Allen. We had a dynamic group with Mr. Jonathan, Mrs. Allen, with Bree, Karis, and we also had Miss Jackie and Miss Anita who were on the line, but were unable to hear. So I was on the phone with them a few minutes ago to get their input, and I'll share that out. And they are sitting on speakerphone on my laptop, so hopefully they can hear all of this. We had a really powerful conversation. I think one of Miss Jackie's concerns that she expressed was, we're doing a lot of talking, which is great, and just kind of reflecting on some of the things that were going to happen that haven't happened yet. And wondering what some of the phases for this work are going to be. So this may be something we want to report out on from the architectural team about, will it start from Euclid and go all the way to Superior? What might those phases look like? And wanting to really ensure, I think the biggest thing, that community voice remains centered, and that as new developments, whether it be regarding League Park, whether it be the Cleveland Foundation or the library, that as those new developments come into place, that the community is not boxed out, and that they're able to really utilize these spaces and have them be their own. And so that's one thing that I, wanted to echo from our conversation. Miss Carolyn mentioned some great points as well, wondering about location. So where might that park and play sit? It might be too early in the process to say, but I think one thing that's important is really honoring the community at whole, but also making sure that we're honoring, what parts make the most sense where. Mr. Jonathan has a beautiful vision about wholesome healing centers that include a holistic approach to health where folks can access in the neighborhood. And Bree made a wonderful comment about residents being entirely involved, particularly in the arts and affirmations being placed in the neighborhood, that should remain a very organic process. And wanting to mention, and these are some of her words, that the architects need to really be getting involved in the community to get a really good sense of who people are and where they are, for instance, and being mindful of placement. And our final thing, Miss Jackie really wanted to emphasize lighting. In her words, she said, light it up. Did anyone have anything to add from our group before I pass the mic back to the architects?
Just really quickly, and you've touched on it already, but what Ms. Allen said to me just was really vital about placement and about the importance of where things are based on the residents. And so making sure that the community involvement continues to be very, very heavy for where people are and who those people are. So for instance, if they're a single family home versus if they're you know, a full family and they have kids and they want to be really active. So putting certain things with noise in places where it won't necessarily bother the residents as much, so that these developments are still prioritizing the residents, and it's not just like, okay, we're going to take the data and put it here without really digging very, very deep. And I think that when thinking about placement of basketball courts and things like that, that's really important for the longevity of the peace and the happiness of the residents, so that it's not just like, here, we gave you what you wanted, but that it's also like, we're being really mindful of where you are and who you are and how this is going to impact you 10 years from now. So yes.
Thank you so much to everyone for that feedback, for those really critical things that need to be considered as everything moves forward. Especially those ideas of proximities, I think that's something that's one of our next big conversations to have together, to start to figure out where these pieces and details make the most sense for everyone. I want to be very conscious of everybody's time. We're a little bit after 7 o'clock this evening. We had kind of an interactive piece that we were going to wrap things up with. And if people are up for a few more minutes, we'd love to do that. So please, let's see. Krista, could you pull up the presentation? And then I'm going to pass things over to Alex, who's going to run this activity for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the home stretch in front of us. So I want to be mindful that it is a Friday night. So I'm going to ask you to get out your cell phone or another device. And there's 2 ways to join kind of this interactive polling. And what we're going to do is ask, we've talked about kind of how the street gets used. And one of the things and one of the big important questions that we need some direction on is what does it look like? So in the next few slides, you'll see that. But before we jump there, if you go to a web browser and you go to pollev.com, you'll be prompted, and please enter City Arch 502. Or if you want to join by text message, text City Arch 502 to the number 22333. And these instructions are going to show up on the next few slides. So let's go to the next slide because I want you to kind of jump right in. The first question that I'm going to ask you guys is, how much more time do you want to spend tonight with us talking about streetscape? Like, do I have you for, there we go, less than 10 minutes, I can feel it. All right, 15, or I could talk about this all night. Now, I will share as the votes start to come in, I will share with you, are they all coming in at A? Holy crud. All right, so I will share with you that I could talk about this all night, but clearly you don't want to. So now that you guys have a feeling for how this works, I'm gonna jump into the next few slides. All right, Krista, can you jump for me, please? All right, so what does it look like? So there's going to be a series of 4 kind of clusters, and this is kind of the parts, pieces of what goes on the streetscape: benches, trash cans, light poles, bike racks, those types of things. So the first one is more of a traditional. If we could go to the next slide, that'd be fantastic. So traditional kind of feels, you know, I will say traditional. Like, it feels of a place, it feels somewhat historic. So if this is kind of what you would like, if we can go to the next one, please let me know. I like it, which is texting A or selecting that, or thumbs down, don't like it. Let's move on to something else. So, all right, we like it. So I think that that kind of conjures and talks about something that harkens back to the history and to the heritage that is at around League Park. And so, all right, we got a tie. All right, so who is going to be the next vote that is going to break the tie? Because I can't move on to the next slide and honor that less than 10 minutes if I have unless I have a tie break.
I would be the next vote, but I can't get the poll. I'm not on yet where it says city architect yet.
All right, what is your vote? Is it I like it or thumbs down?
I like it.
All right, so we got a winner with I like it. So we're going to move on to the next one. And there's other styles here too. All right, there we go. Thank you. All right, so the next style is
Alex, I'll just add really quickly, if anyone's having a problem getting into the poll everywhere, please feel free to add your thoughts in the chat function.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Michelle.
record that and make sure that we compile it all. So thank you.
Thank you. So this is a little bit more of a modern feel. You can see it's less of kind of the old style benches. It introduces a couple other materials, the idea that there's some maybe backless benches and different types of receptacles. So we could vote on this with the next slide, Krista. Excuse me. So this is more of a timeless style. Thumbs down, okay, or I like it. Seems like I'm kind of, oh, here we go with the tie again. Okay, so I see how it is. All right, I'm gonna give you guys 15 more seconds on this to try to get an idea of more of that timeless, and it's kind of a runaway right now with the thumbs down. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this out in about 5 seconds. 3, anybody wants to jump in at 2 or 1? All right, so we got thumbs down on timeless. Let's go to the next one. All right, modern. So this is exactly what it says. This is not really relying on history or heritage as much. This is a new chapter. This is kind of what the next kind of piece of Hough or the next piece of East 66th Street might entail. So on the left is more of a modern kind of pedestrian light fixture. You can see the benches, the planters, maybe some sort of picnic table, the umbrella table. The orange element that's on the left is a bike rack. So it kind of has a little bit more of a modern flair. So if we can go to the next slide to let you guys vote and jump in, that'd be fantastic. So from a more modern standpoint, what are we thinking? A, I like it. B, thumbs down. Oof. All right. You guys are like right on the fence with most of these. Very interesting. I think I see kind of where we're headed with this. I think we're seeing kind of a blend of all of these things together. All right, I'm going to close it down in about 10 seconds. Anybody want to jump in and be the tiebreaker? 5, 3, 2. You guys are going to let it sit as a tie, huh? 2, 1. All right, closed out. That one's a tie. That one is an absolute tie. Let's go to the next, please. All right. I hear you, Keith, that we need to blend it. All right, from an artistic standpoint, all right, let's not order a damn thing out of a catalog. Let's make it as artistic and as special as we possibly can, all right? You can see what it is. I'm not gonna spend over time talking about it. Let's get right to the vote. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat session, so we can go to the vote screen. I'd appreciate it. I like it, A. B, thumbs down. There we go. I think this one might be a little contentious, all right? Because I'm seeing the chat and it's kind of funny to me. All right, artistic but different than that. I hear you, Brittany. Artistic but not those artists, right? That's what I heard. You know, so as we kind of wind this down, I want to kind of be very mindful of public art and kind of what our role is and kind of where this process is going to kind of culminate with. We are charged with creating those places and spaces for that public art to occur. I don't know if you guys can tell or not from the webcam, I am a white guy from Kentucky, okay? I am not your public artist. This is art of and from the folks that live in this community. All right, so we're creating the space. Your voices, your criteria, your creativity, you're gonna feel that. All right, so I want to be just very, very mindful of that, and kind of a point of clarity is that our job is to kind of create that space for it, and then you as a community, that's your voice, that's your art, that's your representation. It is not ours. So with that, I think that is the last for me. I'm going to turn it back over to Daniel to close us out, maybe with some words of wisdom, and kind of set us free on a Friday night. So thank you very much for your participation.
So I just want to take a moment once again to thank you all for being here. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time, but I do want to just take a moment to invite you all. We have another meeting coming up on July the 10th, about a month from now. And so I just want to invite each and every one of you to invite one person to the next one, just so that we can get as many people involved and engaged. And just, this is the essence of what it means to make change. If we can make change on one street, if we impact the look and feel of one street, then that is true and authentic change. And so if we can get more people involved in that change, then we will start to understand that we can change all kinds of things. So I appreciate you. God loves you, and so do I. And I hope that you all have a beautiful and fantastic weekend. We truly appreciate you and look forward to seeing you and having conversation again. And please feel free to interface with those of us that are on the team anytime with any thoughts. All right, is there anything I'm missing, Miss Lexy or anyone?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Thank you all for being here. Go in peace. I am going to play us some music on the way out. Yeah, Joyce, go ahead.
Sorry, we just want to keep everyone in the loop. So one of the suggestions is, if you feel comfortable, please send your email address and phone number to Michelle's email address, which is michelle@cityarc.com, because then we can send you texts or email messages about where we are in the process, and also when the next meeting is, so you can share that with your friends and neighbors. So sorry again for interrupting you, Lexi.
No, all good, all good. Go in peace. Be well. Thank you so much for joining us.